And we are live. Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn. He's the Padonis. And tonight we're breaking down live round 3. Not a great round for us. In fact, a pretty grim end. That final game was going to swing our round, and we had the potential to have a really great round and a really memorable one. But I will start us off before I throw to you, Padonis. That's punting. I think that sums up punting really well, that even when you think you're getting on a roll, you think that you can't get anything wrong, you think the mixed matchup's never going to lose, you think you're going to sweep best bets, you've got a couple of multis well placed, you just get that game where nothing goes right or it doesn't go the way that you planned. And that's why you got to remember that, nothing's certain, and always to bet a responsible amount, because we just cannot expect to win every mixed matchup, every best bet, or every multi. And I'll talk about the 10-1 multi that lost on a $1.30 leg. But honest, first losing week, you're holding up okay?
First losing week. Look, it was bound to happen at some stage, and it's about how we recover and how we bounce back and how we handicap moving forward. I felt that we're a little bit unlucky in some stages, and especially with the mixed matchup, which we can talk about. We're in a good spot there at halftime, especially. We needed any points for Manly in the first 20 minutes of the second half there, and they bombarded the Bulldogs line for a fair chunk of that 20 minutes. And we even had a loose ball in the in-goal there where all we needed to do was Saab to pick it up off a Cherry Evans kick, and I think we would have saluted.
Yeah, that when you lose on a tie, and we need our team that we pick to outscore the opponent, and that factors into us always getting juicy odds, you're always going to feel unlucky. But, you only got to go back 1 week ago where we were on the edge of our seat and we were on the right side of the mixed matchups. So anytime it's close, you're always going to feel unlucky. But we don't use this pod to just say we're unlucky when we lose. We want to learn from it. It wasn't the best pick we could have made because Manly once again let us down and underperformed. There are a few reasons. But let's actually cap that Manly Bulldogs game last. Let's rewind and go all the way back to the beginning of the round. And just before we jump into the first game of the round, which was a best bet win in the Sharks 36 beating the Dragons 12, let's hear from our sponsor, find out how the bookies went over round 3.
G'day punters, it's Tristan Merlahan here from Top Sport. Interesting week again. The punters got off to a really good start with the Sharkies very, very well backed in the opener of the round. That was a really interesting betting game. Every time it seemed like we moved the line, we opened at 1.5. The money was for the Sharks. We got it out to 2.5. It was for the Dragons. We got it back to 1.5. It came for the Sharks. Got to 2. It was for the plus again. And then late we laid a lot of head-to-head wagers. So it was good action, but just the weight of money at the end was very, very strong Sharks, and we laid a bit of the minus in place. So it was an ugly start. Also, the Warriors-Tigers game was a very ordinary result to start the weekend as well. So we're 0-2 early, but then things changed a little bit. The game earlier today between the Broncos and the Cowboys was a very good result for us. The money was one-way traffic for the Broncos, so the Cowboys getting the job done was something very handy. And also the other game, which was a good one, was actually the Titans against the Raiders. The Titans, despite being underdogs, were very, very well backed in that last hour, and it looked like they were home for a good chunk, but then obviously gave up that big lead. This game, where I'm just shooting this at halftime in the Bulldogs-Manly game, this one is quite a sizable one as well. So we'll see what that one finishes. That try for Manly right on halftime probably is going to prove the difference, but we will see how we go. All right, hopefully everyone back to winner over the weekend. Thanks, guys.
So Tristan recorded that at halftime of Manly Bulldogs. He was nearly resigned to losing another mixed matchup, but he also mentioned to me the biggest bets they took on that game was Manly halftime full-time, which actually is a winner. Manly's up 2 at halftime thanks to a try on the siren and a sideline conversion, and then they hang on and win by 1. So I don't know how TopSport did out of that. Manly might have been a multi-anchor for some people, but then if you were like us and you laid the points with Manly, it became evident late in that game that there just was not going to be enough points for us to cover. And as I said before, agonizingly short on the mixed matchup. But talking about points, this round began in bad conditions as well, pouring rain in Wollongong. And this was the Dragons hosting the Sharks. As I said before, Sharkies winning 36-12. Our best bet was Sharks minus 1.5 at $2. So that's probably our best bet of the season so far. And speaking of the points, 15 of 16 NRL games this year prior to round 3 went under The total for this was about 38. The rain was pouring. I saw it drop to 36. I saw it drop to 35. And then you get a 48-point game. Kind of what we warned on Wednesday. It's never that easy when it comes to picking totals. But what was your takeaway out of this one, Padonis?
Yeah, for sure. So as you touched on, the Sharks were our best bet. And coming into the game, we sort of felt that they were the bit stronger side, a little bit superior to the Dragons. And I thought that the Sharks were pretty strong, and it sort of showed that they are the better team. But what sort of surprised me was how well they did move the ball, considering the wet conditions that they did have to experience. I thought Nico Hines was pretty strong. He seems to look fantastic at the moment, gelled straight in there. We thought it'd take a little bit more time. That's probably surprised me a bit, how well he's gelled into the team so soon. I thought the sin bin of Sewer was key midway through that first half. At that stage, it was 0-0. It was a pretty physical and brutal contest. Like derby, both sides were going to be up for it. And I think that's 4 sin bins for Sewer in the last 2 seasons. So I think it's definitely something he's going to need to address, his technique. And I think he needs to aim a little bit lower in the contact. Otherwise, it's going to keep handicapping the Dragons. As we saw last week against Penrith, it was the same play. He got sin bin against Penrith too. Look, I thought the Dragons were a little bit better than what the scoreline showed in the end. I thought the Sharks had some pretty fortuitous tries, some fluke tries in the second half. So if you're a Dragons fan, I wouldn't be too disheartened with the performance of the side. I thought that they're still a pretty physical team, and they got stuck in the forward battle there. But it's a case of the Sharks being a bit too strong, and I'm glad we're on the right side.
And yeah, as you said, the Sharks were actually willing to play some footy, which might have caught the Dragons by surprise. The Sharks threw it around and opened them up. And I think that is the sign of a good team in Cronulla, that we know they can win in a grind, as we saw in round 2, the way that they came back and beat Parramatta. But they can also win in an open, free-flowing, high-scoring game if they need to. And even though they might have had some luck, you scored 36 points in those conditions. That's impressive. And as for the Dragons, you're right, like the sin bin hurts, but I don't think they would have come that close either way. I'm not going to say they're phony. Still 2 respectable performances to open the season before this one. But we kind of think the Dragons are a bottom 6 type team. And the thing about those teams is they do not bring it every week. They have their inconsistent performances, and that was won by the Dragons. Then moving to Friday, a game that didn't really surprise. But we got a bit of an ugly affair and a desperate affair, but it was the Warriors 16 beating the West Tigers 12. Anything you learnt from this one?
I felt that it was a game where both sides were desperate and winless heading to the game, and it sort of looked like that way. There was plenty of attitude and effort in defense, but then both sides lacked any cutting edge with the ball. Plenty of errors in that game. Second half was tryless, which is particularly painful because in the multi that we had, that we posted on Thursday, we had first try to be after 8 minutes. Didn't end up mattering anyway because we had Brisbane to win head-to-head, but then when the second half goes tryless, but then you get a James Tarmo try in the 7th minute, it's a bit disappointing. But look, I thought the Tigers had every opportunity at the end there to sort of get their win. Warriors went down to 12 men, but it just sort of sums up where the Tigers are at the moment. I think they had 5 sets in that final 8 minutes with 5 incompletions. So it's pretty disappointing, and some question marks to be answered for Madge.
And what you didn't mention then with all those sets that the Tigers had was it was up against 12. Montoya was in the bin for basically the final 10 minutes of the game. So it was the Tigers' game to be won. So although we said on Wednesday New Zealand was the obvious pick, I think we were kind of vindicated in thinking that we thought it was pretty much a 50-50 game. And certainly the Tigers could have won that one. Controversial moment in the first half. I thought bizarre that the ref, I always think they're trying to be a hero when they don't send it upstairs. Like, I'm just calling it. I saw it. Leilua might have scored a try, and he got up celebrating. Yeah, in your opinion, you reckon? And I reckon, like, if they looked at it 5 times, 10 times, maybe they stick with on-field decision. But you got to have a look at it. And it very well could have been a try, could have been a different game, but sometimes that's the way the luck goes when you're struggling, especially when you're kind of paddling in mud. But the New Zealand, not even that impressive, but just doing enough, and I suppose to hang on there late and defend their line the way they did, although the Tigers are a limited attacking outfit, to defend your line. And as you say, no tries in the second half. And you got a man in the bin and you gut out a win. That's an important win for New Zealand. And it kind of just spells what could be a very long season for West. They do have a fair few outs, but still, if you can't win kind of at home against New Zealand in a kitchen sink spot, you're just not going to win too many games. Now, this was an interesting one. Next up, the blockbuster Friday night and we had our first side bet of the season because we had total crossfire disagreement. You were completely right taking the Rabbitohs, who beat the Roosters 28-16. The line was Roosters -3.5, -4. So that was our side bet. Not that the handicap came into play. You get the outright big upset victory. And sometimes with a side bet, like, if the Roosters had been up 8 late in the game and then Bunnies scored late and Roosters win by 2, yeah, I'll shake your hand and say you beat me on the side bet, but I'll think to myself, I really felt I had the right side. But there's absolutely no doubt left in that one who was on the right side. So I feel like your presence is already paying off, steering people away from the Roosters, where I tried to make a case for the Roosters, and you were right. But did anything out of this game surprise you?
I wouldn't say anything surprised me. I thought the way that South sort of ran away with the game was a bit of a surprise to me. Heading into the contest, I felt both teams were pretty even, and I didn't really see anything change my mind. I still sort of maintained that. I did lean towards the South's forward pack and thought that they were a little bit stronger, and I said that on Wednesday's podcast, and I thought that they did come out and dominate, and it sort of really showed that they were 0-2, and they were the home team, and I thought that they were a bit more desperate and physical and aggressive. And I think that in a bit of a change to what South had in the first few weeks is that they were committed to running through the middle of the Roosters, and then they sort of earned the right to play a bit of footy, whereas they were probably guilty in the first few weeks of trying to go sideline to sideline and try to catch people out wide because they were so good at it last year, but they didn't really sort of earn the right to. So that point of view there, I thought the Roosters were pretty disappointing with the ball. Thought they looked a bit panicked and rushed in attack. I can't remember a game where I've seen so many errors and a poor performance from someone like Tedesco, who's normally such a freak and someone that they can rely upon to sort of get him out of trouble and win games for him on his own. Sort of really showed there when they had that 20-meter restart just before Alex Johnson's try. And then Tupou, instead of running it to take a hit up, he passes to Tedesco. And then Tedesco, instead of running it, passes to Billy Smith, who's in front of him. So that was a little bit... I was a bit shocked seeing that, considering the Roosters were 1-2 and they sort of had everything to play for as well in that game. But thought Mitchell and Manu, that sort of side contest, lived up to all the hype. And first run of the game, Mitchell runs straight at Manu, and then Manu gets one back over him, scoring a try. And look, it was a great game. If you're a South supporter, and happy to go 1-0 up on side bets against you, and I'm sure it's going to be a long season, and there's some opportunities for you to get that back on me.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy to be wrong, at least if it steered us away from a losing best bet. What is annoying is that the Roosters were so good in round 2, and that beat our best bet when we wanted to bet against the Roosters in round 2, questioning, are they underdone this season? And then they come out and they're pretty poor again in round 3. At least that's disappointing for me. But you're right, like Teddy, go a step further. That's a gift. It was a gift of a try at a crucial point in the game, 6-0 down, and then all of a sudden you're 12-0 down, and so uncharacteristic. And I felt like, all right, it's not the Roosters' night. And although they did come back, I think from 12-0 down, they were 12-10 at one stage. Souths were just the more physical side. The point you made about them being winless and in a home opener, there were more Souths fans there, and they were more hungry. And you also mentioned the hooker position for the Roosters. They want Verrills there. I think they're trying to deal with a makeshift hooker. It showed, while Cookie was excellent for the Bunnies. And we talked about how Lockie Ilias is going to need some time to prove himself in the 7. But it's funny because it's the Roosters halves that look like they need more time. Obviously, Luke Keary coming back off that ACL, they're not living up to what we know their potential is, but it is a long season. And I'm sure in the long run they're not panicking yet, but congratulations, mate, because you're already costing me money being here with $100 coming your way. But we'll tally it up. We'll see how we go towards the end of the season. Moving to Saturday, the Panthers. This was an interesting one, but the Panthers 38 beat the Knights 20. What was interesting about this game, firstly, was all the pre-game news. So we kind of liked Penrith, but we agreed on Wednesday you wouldn't play Penrith when you knew they could have some key withdrawals. And while I was looking at Fisher-Harris, unlikely to play, definitely didn't expect Cleary. Then that became official. And then surprisingly, Liam Martin was also withdrawn. Now, do you recall, Mateus, how low that line went? Because it was like 10.5 on Wednesday. Did it get as low as 5.5?
5.5 was, I think it was $1.78, but it was definitely 6.5.
So 5.5, 6.5. So 4-point line move for one guy that was 50-50 in Fisher-Harris, Cleary was probably never playing, and Liam Martin was a surprise. So that's a pretty violent line move. And if you took Penrith at that lower line, you did well, because in the end they win by 18 points. But then, and whereas all the people in our group that got the early line on Knights and got plus 12.5, plus 14.5, they're dancing in the street. But then Kalen Ponga's withdrawn, and again we warned that. Unfortunately, you hope that this is not going to be a long-term thing, but it certainly happened a few times last year. Ponga's out, and the line kind of recovers all the way back to like 9.5 minus 10. And it's hard to take too much out of this game. I'll lead us off because of course, the send-off of Barnett, complete brain snap. And the Knights were leading 6-4 at the time that Barnett, leads elbow into the jaw of Chris Smith, totally off the ball. And obviously, when you get sent off, especially in a day game against a ruthless side like Penrith early, it can be any score. So if anything, the fact that the game was not a total blowout, and in fact, the Knights were taking a sideline conversion to cut it to 6 with a few minutes to go. They did miss that conversion, and then Penrith scored twice, which is quite brutal for the people that did get that really good closing line value on the Knights, because Penrith extends that lead a bit. But Penrith weren't that impressive. But I heard Cleary in the presser saying he thinks the team kind of relaxed because they were up against 12. It almost threw them out. And my only other point from this game is Cleary is likely to be back, Nathan, from what Ivan said in the presser. So that's important to take away. It's obviously not 100%, but it sounds like they will get him back. And Penrith, one of the questions you would have had, their left side attack so good last year, but obviously no Matt Burton, no Brian To'o. Well, you bring in Tago and May, and they had 5 tries between them. And that May try was the second winner in our anytime try scorers bet from Winning Mood. We picked 3 anytime try scorers. Katoa scored first on Thursday night. We had May, who scored first on Saturday, and then we had Turbo, who scored Manly's first try today. So we only needed to win 2 of those to win the bet. So at least that was a positive out of the weekend. We don't count the Winning Mood bet in the tripod record, but still glad that one got a win for the people that do follow that bet. What else did you learn from this one?
As you said, pretty hard to sort of take anything away given the circumstances of a brain explosion from Barnett. There's no other way to put it. The Knights were right in the game, and it was an off-the-ball play. It was pretty disappointing if you're a Knights fan. I thought that Penrith did sort of relax in the second half once they got a few scores up. Knights scored a few tries, and they were pretty brave considering. So I wouldn't take too much away from the Knights. I think that they are a little bit better than what we sort of had them at the start of the season, I think. So I'll definitely be looking to support them in the coming weeks, assuming that we can get the lines to sort of match. And then, look, at the end, the Knights, as you said, had that conversion to be within 6, but then Penrith went up a few gears again in the final 5 minutes and scored a couple of late tries. But I think Penrith always had that game. They were a little bit clunky, but when you're playing against 12 men for more than an hour, it's pretty hard to see anything other than a win. And just kicking ourselves with that. We didn't take the 6.5 once we saw it, but that's okay.
And there's no certainty that a couple of those key forwards will be back next week. And I think it's a grand final rematch next week. So look forward to that. But look, we had a couple of cracking games to end Saturday. So the next one was Parramatta 28 defeating the Storm 24. Parramatta's rolled the Storm 3 straight times, in fact. And this was down in Melbourne again. And you can lead us off with what you saw in this one.
2 weeks in a row now, the Amy Park crowd has been treated to absolute classics.
And Golden Point, yeah.
That's right. So I was pretty surprised to see Brandon Smith play when I checked the lineups about 20 minutes before kickoff, because he sort of had that broken hand, and it looks pretty bad against the Tigers in round 1. But nonetheless, he played and hit the ground running like he never left and scored the opening try. And I thought the Eels sort of matched them physically in the first half and showed some great ball movement of their own. And even though it did go to Golden Point in the end, and we know that there was a fluke play, which we'll just touch on in a second, I thought the Eels pretty much deserved their win on balance. And I did lean Melbourne on Wednesday, but it was good that we sort of stayed off that. Didn't really have an agreement all the way. And I thought Harry Grant is a big out because it sort of takes away from when he does come on the field. And Brandon Smith is a great hooker in his own right, but he sort of, you need him around the middle there as a second forward or third forward option, because their bench is a little bit light considering there's a couple injuries, and we know what happened to Welch a few weeks ago. And the pod villain from last week, Ray Stone, makes amends for all the Para fans and scores a winning try off a Moses field goal attempt and golden point that hit the post, and everyone sort of watched the ball. And tell me something, Jacob, because I was still questioning it. I think he was offside still.
Oh, no, I thought when they showed the replay, I thought he would have been offside for sure, but I think he timed his run perfectly. I'll give all the credit in the world to Stone. Not only does he score the winning try, and look, I haven't heard the news today. Have they said, like, was that an ACL? I hope it wasn't. He's actually really important utility and mongrel value off the bench for Para. So hopefully, because he obviously did his knee as he scored, and that was his second try of the game. He had another key try in the second half that helped Parramatta get in front after Parramatta was, this is a back and forth game, but Parramatta was up 12-6, then they were down 18-12, then they were up 24-18. You mentioned Brandon Smith not only played, scored the first try and was really huge for Melbourne, and they needed him. Xavier Coates was scratched, but just like Parramatta just took it to him all game. Parramatta let the Storm in late in the first half, which I think really invited the Storm back into the contest. And then they invited the Storm in again late in the game because the Eels were up 6 and attacking the Storm line, and you could set up for a field goal there and you end the game, and then they pushed it wide and turned the ball over and then conceded a 50-metre try, or a try from inside the Storm's own half where Brandon Smith just dummied, and I think he ran over Campbell Gillard, and then a couple of offloads. Mick Munster was on it, and Pappy scores a try with like a minute or two to go that kind of forces the game to golden point. And here we go again for the Storm and anybody's game. But as you say, like, those 1% of plays, in the end of the day, Mitchell Moses' field goal hits the post, and the only guy who was really chasing it, I mean, Hughes was back there, but Stone, that pays off. That one time out of 100 gets a famous win for the Eels. And people can comment if they did hear, or you let me know if you heard the severity of that injury, because I haven't heard that one yet. But we had another game right down to the wire to finish Saturday night, and that was the Canberra Raiders defeating the Gold Coast Titans 24-22. If you didn't see this one, the Raiders were down 22-0. I'll let you lead us off again, mate.
Unbelievable performance that was. One of Canberra's greatest ever comebacks, and I think it was the biggest comeback in the last 10 years, I think, as well. The Titans looked great for the first half there. Every time they had the ball, they looked like they were going to score. Every time they went to Canberra's half, it was very, very lackluster performance from Canberra defensively. I thought they were pretty slow in their defensive line. Titans were sort of rolling downhill. I think that try just before halftime was pretty crucial for Canberra because it sort of gave them some hope heading into the second half, going in at 22-4 rather than 22-0. But then, second half, it was a bit of a head scratcher. Still trying to question how the Canberra came back into it and how the Gold Coast let that game slip. But then, Schneider, grubbers to Nickel Klogstad with 3 minutes to go for the match winner. And, Canberra get a famous victory and all the players were celebrating.
And you could say we were kind of right in our handicap on Wednesday because we both said we thought Raiders should be the favourites, but we couldn't quite justify enough line value to play the Raiders. We felt the line probably should be about -2.5. And in the end, they win the game by 2, so we wouldn't have necessarily covered, although depending on when during the week you might have got at this, you may have been able to get a Raiders -1.5. It did seem like the Titans were quite a popular underdog and the line did shorten up. And that's why you've always got to try and find the best line, because if you liked the Titans, you should have got +2.5 and you should have won. And if you like the Raiders, maybe you took them $1.78 straight up or as I said, laid the 1.5. But first thing I noticed in this game was that the Titans came to play footy, that it was crisp conditions and they played attacking footy. As you said, they looked threatening the whole half. 22-0 lead. They didn't rest on their laurels. When they harnessed momentum, they applied the pressure and it looked like they could name a score. And it also looked like the Raiders had just brought their North Queensland form back down to Canberra, and you're thinking, oh, geez, it's going to be a long night. But as you said, that try just before halftime for the Raiders was absolutely crucial, and that could have been avoided by the Titans. It was a 5th tackle. I think it was Elliot Whitehead just running it up into the line. If you wrap him up, on 5th tackle a guy's going to try and offload. They let the offload out and a couple more passes, and the Raiders score out wide, and it kept them in the game. And then second half, the Raiders stepped it up, and I thought, obviously, Jack Whiten was pulling all the strings, and it was the Jack Whiten show, but he was playing off the back of his forward pack. And over the halftime break, Raiders have got a couple of class props in Papali and Tapane, but those guys are off to start the second half. And so it was actually Emre Gula and Corey Horsburgh leading the way, getting the changing the momentum of the game, getting the go forward in the middle, Raiders playing off the back of it, scoring points, getting more confidence, and then they brought Papali'i and Tapine back on to bring them home. And it's still anybody's game right late. As you say, you score for grubber, just grounding it inside the dead ball line with a couple minutes to go. But huge comeback win for the Raiders, and one that the Titans absolutely let slip. And then speaking of one Queensland team.
And we did talk about one thing I just sort of left off there. We did talk about the overs on our Wednesday podcast. That was sort of a game
that was a good call.
We did lean overs, and for anyone that sort of backed that, you guys pay dividends with that. So that was great.
And I should say thanks for reminding me, although I don't really want to talk about this, but like on Dabble, you can copy our multis. We both gave out a multi that lost by one leg this round. Actually, no, I think yours, you had Manly at the end, but laying the chalk. But my multi, 10-1, only losing leg. And one of the legs, the reason you reminded me, one of the legs was both teams to score 13 plus, $2 odds. Yep, they both scored, 22 plus. One losing leg, an AFL leg, I threw in there, just got greedy. Took Port Adelaide. I'm not a huge AFL follower, but like I have to, defend every pick that I make in any multi. Obviously, if they win, it looks good. And if you lose, you question the pick. But at the time, Port Adelaide was the highest price on any bookie on Dabble. They had lost in round one. They were at home playing a side that had won in round one. I thought at $1.30, that was a pretty safe leg. That lost, and that was the only losing leg in a double-digit multi. So as we sit here today, still yet to bring a multi home for you guys, and that's now 3 double digits that have lost by one leg. And bloody, to lose a multi on the shortest leg, on the $1.30 leg, it does hurt. But let's move to Sunday. Just a couple more games to speak about. And this was a bit of a surprise, but I suppose we're lucky that we stayed off it in the end, because it was Brisbane defeated at home 38-12 by the North Queensland Cowboys. So we nearly played the Broncos. Probably if we could have got -3.5, we're probably on them. But as that line crept up towards 6, it just felt we weren't getting line value. And, this is a result that really no one saw coming, except maybe our special guest, Robbie Farah, who we have to give it up for, because this was his underdog pick of the week. So he's now 2-1. And that was a pretty good call, wasn't it?
He's doing something right, Robbie. So if anyone sort of followed him, it was a sweat-free result for all the Cowboy supporters. And look, you touched on it. We were close to playing it. We sort of liked the 5.5, and then there was a few reasons why we didn't play it. And then one of those factors was the weather. It was predicted to be raining and storms over the weekend in Brisbane. And then when we checked the forecast this morning, it was dry, and the line went to -7.5, -8 at some places. And I thought to myself, we should have taken the line, because we would have got 2.5, 3 points there value. But in the end, you could have had 30 points and it still wouldn't have been enough. That's how dominant the Cowboys were. There was a hat trick to a debutant, Jeremiah Nanai, the apparent Tomalolo heir. I thought the Cowboys were pretty good. The Broncos sort of 8-6 there heading into halftime. I thought that they had all the momentum in the last 5-10 minutes. They couldn't sort of crack the Cowboys when they had a few sets on the line, and then they give away a penalty. Cowboys score like a back-breaking try to go 14-6 up just before halftime. And then Broncos started off the second half in a bit of a back-and-forth tussle, and then Adam Reynolds kicks the ball out a centimetre away from a 40-20. We talk about how close the game can swing. And then he kicks the ball out again on the full from a dropout, and then it sort of snowballed and spiraled out of control from there. And I think Brisbane, they got tackled on tackle 1 just outside their try line 4 times in a row and got pushed into the in-goal for a dropout 4 consecutive sets. I think it was like 81% to 19% possession for like 25 minutes for that second half. I think everything just went against them, and everything that could have went wrong did go wrong. So I wouldn't sort of jump off the Broncos and sort of throw them in the heap. They are a different side to last year, but it was one of those performances where the Cowboys just had everything rolling, and they sort of everything stuck. And congratulations to the Cowboys for winning the derby.
Biggest factor, we missed the Tom Dearden revenge game. That's what we needed to see coming into this one. Of course, they discarded him, and he got the last laugh on this one. comment there from John Pierce about our season-long multi. You're right. Like, you start to worry a little bit now the Cowboys have won back-to-back games as underdogs, because you start to reconsider, like, did we sell them short and did we, underestimate them? And something I said a couple of weeks ago was, look, you look at the Cowboys forward pack on paper and you think it's nothing. It's Taumalolo and nobodies. But I'm telling you, some of these young kids that we don't know yet can't be that bad. They just can't underperform that badly. They're going to unearth some good players. And you mentioned Nanai, not a debutant, but a rookie this year, because in fact, he scored a try off a kick last week. He scored 3 tries off kicks today. So if it's not the Dearden revenge game today, we'll remember that one as the Nanai hat-trick game. But I also thought the key moment in this game was also giving up a try right before halftime. And it was a beautiful short ball from Taumalolo. Was it Griffin Neem? I can't recall, but he put a fellow forward through like sleight of hand. You don't always expect that from Taumalolo, and that caught Brisbane napping because that was right on the stroke of halftime. And that's the difference between 8-6 and an arm wrestle type game to 14-6 and Brisbane's chasing, and then it went from bad to worse. And as you say, errors, they had a horrible completion rate second half, kicks out on the full, getting pushed back in the in-goal. It was all one-way traffic, and the Cowboys gave them a bath second half. Now, let's wrap it up with a game that did not go our way, which we've already kind of half touched on, but just anything else that stood out to you in this final game of the round, which Manly scraped home at home and not by enough to do us any good, but they did win 13-12. I guess since we were just talking about the season multi, you can say we're lucky that the Cowboys got that win we're lucky the Dogs got the win over the Cowboys in round 1, or we'd have a 3-0 Cowboys. And we're lucky that the Bulldogs have lost a couple of close games since then, so we're still not really in danger that the Dogs will come top 10. But any other takeaways out of this one that went right down to the wire?
And you touched on the season multi, and then it's good that we had South finally get a win, because it was looking a little bit scary there at one point, because they could be staring at 0-4 next week. But I'm glad that sort of happened. But
that helped. But then again, Roosters and Storm, who we've both got top 4 in the double multi, both lost this weekend. But it's so early, and the good teams will time their run a little bit later. So hard to judge anyway. But it's good fun to kind of have extra rooting interest in some of these games.
Yeah, for sure. So on top of the mixed matchup, we also had a line bet of -9.5, closed about 11.5, and the way the first half went, I thought it was a pretty back and forth forward battle, and not really the game we like to see when we're late close to double digits. We like to see one-way attack, or at least Manly being able to stifle and sort of limit the Bulldogs. But credit to the Bulldogs. I thought that they were worth every bit in that game, and went down to the wire, and sort of the rain in the second half sort of leveled the teams right out. Manly had a stack of possession in that second half. They just couldn't really convert. So Manly's still trying to work out some things. I still think that they're pretty limited in the number 9 there. And that might be a telling factor later on in the season as the games get a bit bigger and they verse some of the better teams. But look, the Dogs were worth it for the 10.5. So everyone who sort of went against us, you had a good opportunity there to sort of take the Dogs, and you don't have to agree with every play that we sort of give out. We thought there was value with Manly. But yeah, it's something we're going to have to rethink, and Manly got the win, so they get the season started, but definitely wasn't a polished performance at all.
Don't you hate it when you bet on a team like today, you bet Manly -10.5, and they never really give you a good shot? I mean, to be fair, from halftime, I actually still felt like we were going to cover, because I thought they really broke the Dogs back. And Tristan said in the video that try could be the difference. It was the difference in the game. But what I hate is when you back a team to cover and they don't, but they still win, and then they're all celebrating. And you're like, what are you celebrating about? But that is an important win for them. They don't care about how many they won by, and they don't care that they only had 12 at the 60-minute mark and had 2 really good opportunities in the second half to score. Saab, he looks great when he's playing in a 30-point win and he gets heaps of space and he gets to run down the sideline for 80 meters, but he doesn't do much else. And he hurt him with some errors and decided not to dive for a Cherry Evans kick. He thought he'd let it bounce. I'm sure that was going to work out well. Cherry Evans got through the line early in the second half, and I thought, here we go, cash it. And he had a 3-on-1 and he slipped. And then they didn't score again until a Cherry Evans field goal some 35 minutes later. So as we said before, Toppy got the better of us this week. But the point you made there is a really important one too. You do not have to agree with us every week. We share our best bets. Not only we share our best bets, we often impact the market. So like the Sharks game, -1.5, we bet it. Every bookie across the country within 20 minutes of the pod was shifting their odds down. You couldn't get Sharks, in the $1.80s to win. You couldn't even get the -1.5, or if you could, it's very juicy. So if you hear us share a best bet and you don't think our reasoning's strong, you're going to get even better value opposing us. So there's plenty of ways you can follow us or listen or watch and get some benefit without just purely blindly tailing, which we don't suggest people do. But what was interesting about this game, we played 9.5 for the best bet. I'm not going to gloat about getting line value when we played an alt line, and the consensus line was pretty much 10.5. But the fact that the weather was so bad and the line didn't drop, where usually poor weather and poor conditions always favors the underdog, I think was kind of cancelled out by the fact that Manly was the sharp side, but it doesn't count for much when you don't cover or really come close. And they got a terrible start, back-to-back tries for the Dogs, including a try very early off a fumbled kick and Wakeham scores. And Wakeham was a late inclusion in the team. I mentioned Burton's bombs on Wednesday night, and that was a big issue again. Manly didn't want any part of a lot of those bombs, and it definitely put Manly under pressure. Manly was wasteful early in the game, although to score a try on the stroke at half-time and kick it from the sideline was basically a miracle, and I thought that would be the momentum they'd need to carry on with it. But then second half, not only did Manly miss more opportunities, the heavens opened up. And then it became very clear that points would be an absolute premium. And from 12-10, Manly opted not to take the 2, 3 different occasions. I think you do take the 2, not just because it would have won the mixed matchup, but because extending by more than a penalty goal in such a grinding type match, now you can push the limits of the refereeing a bit, whereas they didn't take that 2, they didn't score, and then they actually allowed the Dogs a penalty late that tied the game, and Manly could have lost. But Cherry Evans' first field goal charge down. Second one, he does ice it. He has got a habit of doing that, and it is a huge win for Manly, and it is overall positive signs for the Dogs. They've been up to their eyeballs in all 3 games this season, and they're another team we've got to look a little closer at whether we're giving them enough due respect. As we do every week, we've got to reflect. We definitely just don't think that we see it all, and things change every week as well. So we'll go back to the drawing board. We are 4-3 on best bet so far this season. So we got room for improvement because I don't feel like we've nailed our picks in any round yet this season, but we'll do our very best and we'll be back. Any closing thoughts to see us out on this Sunday night, Padonis?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well there. So have a great few days, everyone, and we'll see you Wednesday.
We'll have to give a shout out to the Undertaker since he's commented there. He's 21-13, so a lot of plays. And one of the things the Undertaker's doing, the kind of sicko that he is, along with a few of the other boys, Ben Willie, who else is it on at the NRL Stats, man? They're loving these player props. They're coming up with player props every game, and these guys have got winning records so far this season. So if you're into that kind of stuff, join our group. But yeah, thanks for hanging in there with me, Padonis. All part of your experience, all part of punting. Having a suboptimal week. We'll be back at them on Wednesday, so hope you guys can join us then. Have a great week, and always gamble responsibly. Lego.